All right, as we lock up this special edition of Hannity, unfortunately, that is all the time we have left this evening. This show, we promise, always fair, always balanced. We are not the Destroy Trump media. As always, thank you for being with us. You can follow us on Instagram, @SeanHannity on Twitter. We hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Laura Ingraham, she's up next.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle, a fantastic Friday full of great stories for you, of course. News always breaks throughout the day when it's in Trump land. And a Comey memo may have let a big cat out of the bag. Did he use a meeting with Trump as a setup to tarnish him with that dirty dossier? And also, it's official, the Democrats have hit rock bottom by filing a lawsuit claiming that the Trump campaign conspired with Russia and WikiLeaks to sway the election. My angle later on in the show, you don't want to miss that. And get this, Democrats first tried to expand their voter base with illegal immigrants, then with children, and now with felons. That's a motley crew. And another huge diplomatic win for Trump. Rocket Man might be becoming Pocket Man, pledging to pocket all of his missiles. Hey, and the guys haven't even met yet. Maybe it was Pompeo. Maybe he does have the magic touch. But first, Jim Comey might want to pull the plug on that book tour now that the former investigator himself is under investigation. Fox News has confirmed that the Justice Department's Inspector General is investigating Comey's handling of his memos describing his meetings with President Trump. A source saying that the DOJ's watchdog is looking into whether the former FBI director leaked any classified information. Let's get into the details with attorney Tom Dupree, who served as principal deputy assistant attorney general in the George W. Bush administration, plus Republican Ron DeSantis, who joins us from Florida tonight, and Stephen Mulroy, a former federal prosecutor. Gentlemen, it's great to see all of you. Stephen, let's start with you here. Jim Comey, as former FBI director, perhaps thought that, look, I'm the FBI director. I can declare what's classified and declare what's not classified. And so if I shoot these memos over to a pal of mine at Columbia Law School, no big deal. He'll get into the press, and it'll cause a big stir, and maybe my reputation will be bolstered. Maybe he'll even start a special counsel. But, you know, doesn't this mean that, Comey could be in hot water now with this new investigation?
I'm not sure that's really the case, Laura. It's important to remember exactly what we know here. We won't know for sure until the Inspector General has concluded its investigation about what all the facts are for sure. But the Wall Street Journal has reported that there were only 2 memos that Comey gave to his friend that had any classified information. In one of them, he went through and redacted out the classified information, and the other one wasn't classified at the time. It was only classified later on. So it seems like his course of conduct here was fairly anodyne, fairly inoffensive. You can't very well blame him if the document wasn't classified until a later point in time. That kind of retroactive liability, I think he could argue, is unfair.
Well, Tom Dupree, is self-redaction legit here? He can then redact, like, look, I'm sending it to my pal who's going to get it to the press, but I'm going to get my big Sharpie. I have a Sharpie here. I'm going to get my big Sharpie and black out some foreign intel names.
Yeah, Laura, I think even Jim Comey's defenders would admit that he is walking a very fine line here. You know, if the difference between criminal jeopardy and innocence is where you draw the line with the Sharpie, I mean, my goodness, I wouldn't want to be in Jim Comey's shoes if the IG is digging into these memos line by line, trying to see whether or not he might have left something in that shouldn't have gone out the door.
Well, the Inspector General had no patience for Andrew McCabe, clearly. The lies from Andrew McCabe, I mean, he's in real trouble here, and we'll see if he actually has any criminal jeopardy there. But Congressman DeSantis, let's remember what Jim Comey said back in June of last year when he was testifying on Capitol Hill about why he decided to transmit those memos to his friend. And I think we have the thought. Let's watch.
And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
For a variety of reasons, Congressman. For a variety of reasons, he also self-redacted at least one of the two memos.
Well, it's important to point out that that was malicious leaking of government documents. I asked Christopher Wray under oath, is it appropriate for FBI agents to leak their work product to the press? And he said absolutely not. I do think he's facing exposure because some of that stuff very well may have been classified. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who took those documents. He wanted to generate a special counsel. And it's interesting, you look at those memos, he actually writes down in the memos, I told the president I don't leak. The fact that he's writing that in the memo that he doesn't leak tells me he probably was a habitual leaker.
Actually, you bring up a great point, Congressman, and Steve will go to you on this. This is from the Comey memo. This is from January 6th, right after his first meeting at Trump Tower with the president. He said, and he wrote, I said I was eager to find leakers and like to nail one to the door as a message. That's very dramatic. I said something about it being difficult, and he replied that we need to create a narrative that we were investigating him, of course, because we are not, and I worried such a thing would be misconstrued. But he kept, as Ron said, as Congressman DeSantis said, he went out of his way a number of times to say to the president, he claims in this memo to the file, that, well, I'm not a leaker. You know, you can trust Andrew McCabe. He's a stand-up guy, and I don't leak, and McCabe is in your corner. Memos to the file are written by people to do what? Steve? To do what?
Well, I think probably to memorialize a conversation so that there can be no doubt later on, if it comes up, what exactly was said and what wasn't said. I think this course of conduct shows that Comey was a bit concerned about a potential obstruction of justice. He knew that there was a big controversy about it. He knew that it might become important later on to know exactly what was said and wasn't said. And so he wanted to contemporaneously document it so that there'd be no doubt.
On January 6th, he was worried about obstruction of justice?
Well, I think quite possibly. If you take a look at his whole course of conduct, I mean, he went out of his way to redact.
If you think he is obstructing justice, and you like sitting there and he's like, well, I'm looking forward to staying on with you, and I'm looking forward to, you know, he said, what are your plans? He's like, I enjoy my job. I'd like to stay on. So that's why Molly Hemingway today and others wrote that this whole thing smells like a big setup. The whole meeting, the talking about the dossier to rattle Trump or try to rattle him. This, well, we don't know if it's true, but there's this thing, and it looks like they're saying this. Tom, your reaction?
Yeah, you know, it is puzzling. I mean, you know, the administration is just getting started, and already the FBI director is, you know, memorializing for whatever his purposes were.
Well, you don't memorialize to make yourself look bad. You memorialize yourself to make you look good in a meeting. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And look, this is exceedingly unusual. I mean, I can't imagine any other administration where a few days in you have someone feeling the need to create this sort of record. So there's unusual things going on here.
Congressman DeSantis, there's a Comey point in these memos that talked about CNN. I want to read it. He says, I said media like CNN had them, the memos, and were looking for a news hook. I said it was important that we not give them the excuse to write that the FBI has the material, or that's redacted, and that we were keeping it very close hold. He said he couldn't believe they hadn't gone with it, and I said it was inflammatory stuff, and they would get killed for reporting straight up from source reports. And then, bingo, just a few days later, Congressman DeSantis, CNN runs with it, then it gets published elsewhere. This is why people were saying, again, the way this is written, this memo to the file, I said CNN would be crazy to put. I don't know, if you're writing the novel here, yeah, and there's the CNN headline, Intel chiefs presented Trump with claims Russian efforts to compromise him. I mean,
well,
where did they get that from? Where did they get that headline from?
Well, just think about it. Jim Comey, this is a guy, he never memorialized any conversation with Barack Obama. He never did with Loretta Lynch, even though he now says Loretta Lynch was conflicted. It was only from day one with Donald Trump. So that meeting to me is very fishy because Jim Clapper, I, and most of my Republican colleagues believe is the one that actually leaked the existence of the meeting to CNN. But why would Comey have...
Why do you think that?
based off the Intelligence Committee, what they were able to come up with, and they allude to it in their report. But that's just the inference I make. I think he was the guy. Now, here's the deal. Comey acknowledges that it's not newsworthy at the time. They needed a hook. So what does he do? He gives them the hook. So either him and Clapper knew this together, or maybe he was acting at Clapper's suggestion.
Yeah.
But he provided the hook for that to go out. And when he's briefing Donald Trump on it, he only talks about the one salacious allegation. He didn't discuss other aspects of the dossier. Don't you think that's something the president-elect should have been entitled to know about? And yet Comey hid that from him. This thing smells very badly, and I think he's going to have to answer more questions about that.
He has to come back to Capitol Hill, does he not, Steve? I think the point that Congressman DeSantis is making is when you go out of your way to bring up the dossier, and you bring only basically one of the most inflammatory elements of the dossier up, that's rocket fuel to someone like Trump. Like, what? And, you know, you don't. There's a lot of other stuff in the dossier. You bring up that one point, and we know now, in hindsight, that he was using that professor at Columbia to then get information out to the press. So he had it in his mind, a couple months later, to disseminate stuff to the press. He wanted to get out there. He wanted a special counsel appointed. So why wouldn't it be logical now to think, maybe he and Clapper chatted about this, said, you know, we got to get this out. Trump's
You know, one person's setup artist is another person's, whistleblower. I mean, here's a lifelong Republican who was promoted by Republican presidents and whose handling of the Clinton email investigation, at least his public handling of it, arguably was very much to Clinton's detriment and Trump's benefit. So the idea that he's got a motive to... I'm not sure that he has got the motive to do this setup job that we're speculating.
Wait a second. Hillary Clinton got off scot-free in this email investigation. The Clinton Foundation investigation was totally scotched ultimately. So the idea that he helped Hillary, I never bought that argument. Hillary Clinton, if she were anyone else, would be in jail right now. She were anyone else would be in jail.
What I'm suggesting is that a prosecutor would just simply announce we're not bringing charges. He wouldn't go on to say, but she was extremely reckless. And then a week before the election, when he brought it back up again, well, I'm not sure. I think you can make an argument that that pattern of conduct doesn't show a pro-Clinton bias. If anything, it shows that he was not pro-Clinton.
All right, Tom, look, I see this as Comey has shown us that if he wants to get information to the press, he'll figure out a way to do it. Now, that was a couple months later. He hated Donald Trump. Today he said on an interview, or yesterday, oh, no, I don't hate him. I don't even dislike him. Oh, please. He walked into that Trump Tower meeting. Everything about Trump he despises. The way he dresses, the way he speaks. He probably doesn't think he's as educated as he is. He has utter disdain for Trump. He's a Bush Republican. I know you're a Bush Republican. He's a Bush Republican, but not like a lot of Bush Republicans I know. He's condescending, supercilious, and priggish, and he can't stand Trump because Trump's a different type of guy, and frankly, the kind of guy people vote for.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, one of the many tragedies, I think, here, Laura, is that historically, the reason why the FBI has been held in such esteem by the American public is they have widely been viewed as a nonpartisan, independent law enforcement agency. And what Jim Comey is doing now, I think, undercuts that. Because what it is it's portraying a former FBI director as a partisan actor, as someone who has a political axe to grind. He's going on the talk shows. He's taking personal jabs at the president. And it may be very satisfying to him and to people who don't like the president, but for purposes of the American people's perception of the FBI, I think it disserves the institution, frankly.
Gentlemen, fantastic panel, and we have a lot more to get to here. A related development, Rudy Giuliani now has confirmed that he's joined Trump's legal team to negotiate the end of Special Counsel Bob Mueller's probe. Good luck. Rudy apparently is looking to use his personal relationship with Mueller to smooth things over. Okay. Well, joining us now is someone who also knows Bob Mueller, former Attorney General Mike Mukasey, who held that position when Mueller was FBI director. General Mukasey, Judge Mukasey, God, you were on radio with me this morning, and now you're on TV with me tonight. This is like we're spending the whole day together. I love it.
That's fine. Me too.
That's great. Judge, let's talk about this wild day. Now we have a criminal, investigation going on at the IG, a criminal referral of Andrew McCabe, who was, of course, Comey's deputy, but now the Inspector General is investigating whether Comey knew that some of this information was classified when he transmitted it to his pal at Columbia.
Yeah, I think we ought to put to rest something that one of your guests said on the last segment about how, well, the memos weren't marked classified at the time. They were classified as soon as he wrote them. I had an experience when I started as AG of taking notes at a meeting on a top secret procedure, and when I got up to leave the meeting, my then chief of staff leaned over and wrote in big block letters at the top, TS/SCI, meaning top secret, secure compartmentalized information. In other words, those weren't my notes, those were the government's notes. And those weren't Mr. Comey's memos, they were the government's memos. And the information in them, if it was classified as soon as he put it down on paper.
Well, Judge, he said they were personal reflections, and they were personal thoughts and reflections on the meeting that he had with the president.
Personal thoughts and reflections are fine, but if they are personal thoughts and reflections about classified information, then they are classified personal thoughts and reflections, and you can't simply take them out and leak them.
Judge Mukasey, you were Attorney General when Bob Mueller was FBI Director, and tell us a little bit about him. I know you had daily briefs with him. You met at the White House with others with him on a weekly basis at least. What was he like?
That's an excellent question. The trouble is I'm not in much of a position to answer it because although there were many people that I met with less frequently than I met with him, I really have very little in the way of insight into what he's like as a person. I didn't get to see that. You'll notice that he always wears button-down white shirts. Well, he's very buttoned down and buttoned up, and it's very hard to get a take on him as a person if he doesn't want to give it to you, and he apparently didn't want to give it to me.
Now, when you had one-on-one conversations with him, did he seem like a straight-up kind of guy? Like because you were his boss. I mean, people forget the Attorney General is the boss of the FBI Director. We think the FBI Director is an autonomous person, but you were his boss, and then, of course, President Bush was, his ultimate boss.
Yeah, nominally I was his boss. There were situations in which he performed superbly in helping to try to convert the FBI from simply a crime-solving organization into an intelligence-gathering organization. That was a tough sell to a lot of people, and we had to put in place guidelines that I, along with others at the department, drafted and gave to him, and he helped put them in place and did a superb job at it. However, when there were questions of some policy questions where I questioned him about things that the FBI was doing, he pushed back. And he was somebody who was very devoted to defending the interests of the Bureau. There was a saying at the FBI, never embarrass the Bureau. And it's a bureaucratic saying, and they call it the Federal Bureau of Investigation for a good reason. It's a bureaucracy, and he defended it.
So were these disputes about, the way he was handling certain types of investigations, or
I'm not going to get into what it was about. But there was pushback in the interest of defending what the FBI was doing.
Who was his deputy back then? I can't remember who it was. Who was it? You can't remember.
Right.
I can't remember his deputy. I was like, it was obviously not, it wasn't Andrew McCabe, so I can't.
No, it was not Andrew McCabe, that I can tell you.
And Judge, as we close this out, at the end of this week, where Jim Comey has been on this book tour that seems like it's been going on for months, but it's only really been going on for a few days, do you agree that the damage to the Bureau is somewhat significant, given the fact that he led this agency, and now he's, clearly strafing the president and everyone close to him?
Regrettably, I think the damage is enormous because the head of the organization becomes the figurehead that everybody looks to judge how the organization performs. And his handling, in particular, everybody's got their own favorite issue. Mine is with his handling of the Clinton email investigation was an outrageous performance. President Obama was sending messages and receiving messages on Hillary Clinton's private email server. Jim Comey knew that, and when President Obama went on television and said, there's no issue here, she doesn't really intend to cause harm, What he was saying, in essence, is you better let her off, because if you wind up accusing her, you wind up accusing me. And Comey followed that lead. And it's the notion that this was somehow something that he had to do for the welfare of the country is a lot of disingenuous claptrap.
Judge Mukasey, I love the word claptrap. It's an underused word, and it's one of my favorites. So of course you use it. Judge, thank you so much. And you really have to wonder if the Democrats drank their own Kool-Aid here. Their latest stunt may be proof that their obsession with Russian collusion is making them totally lose their minds. I'm going to diagnose this latest insanity in the Angle. Stay there. The Democrats' long march into irrelevance. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. We have not seen one scrap of evidence demonstrating that President Trump or his campaign colluded with the Russians. Well, that's a big letdown for Democrats who expected to have Trump either convicted or impeached by this point. So now what do? Well, if you can't beat them, sue them. Well, believe it or not, the Democratic National Committee filed a lawsuit today against the Russian government, the Trump campaign, and the WikiLeaks organization. Oh, that's all? Well, they allege, get this, a far-reaching conspiracy to throw the 2016 election to Donald Trump. Yes, I'm serious. Well, I'm surprised at this point they didn't sue CNBC for airing Apprentice reruns. That's not fair. But look, should we really be surprised by any of this? The rage and the fury on the left over Trump's election and their frantic search for something, anything to explain why Hillary Clinton lost has become a total obsession. They thought collusion would invalidate the election.
There is, however, extensive press reporting on the relationships between the Russians and the individuals associated with both the Trump campaign and the incoming administration.
We know the Russians played a very significant role in the campaign.
So you have seen direct evidence of collusion?
I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial.
I've always said that I believe there was collusion.
Poor Auntie Maxine. After all these months and after a special counsel and congressional investigations too numerous to count, what have they actually found? A multi-million-dollar pile of nothing. Well, good luck to the DNC in trying to make a case in court with these star witnesses.
Have you seen any evidence that this dirt, these emails, were ever given to the Trump campaign?
Not so far.
Any reflection of collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russians, there was no evidence of that included in our report.
I understand that, but does it exist?
Not to my knowledge.
When you learned of Russian efforts, did you have evidence of a connection between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors?
As I said, Mr. Gowdy, I don't do evidence.
Now, there's a lot, apparently, that John Brennan doesn't do. But that is just a joke. Now, just imagine the discovery process if this foolishness ever made it to trial. Like, what if the defense demands to see the DNC servers that they claim WikiLeaks hacked? You know, the servers the Democrats refused to let the FBI examine, and that the FBI, for some strange reason, neglected to subpoena. What's on those servers the DNC is so desperate to keep hidden? And also, how about this scene on the witness stand? Does the name Christopher Steele ring a bell, Mrs. Clinton? How about his dossier? And does the DNC really want to go down this road? For a media apparatus that has been predicting huge wins for months,
some evidence for Democrats to be optimistic at their chances for a big blue wave.
The big blue wave is now looking so big, so overwhelming.
And we fell short, but next year, watch out. Next year is going to be a blue wave.
Well, this absurd lawsuit, which reads like it was written by a first-year law student, shows that Democrats aren't sure the wave may not just flatten out before it hits the shore. At this point, when you really look at the totality of all of this, rather than looking like a party that has the wind at its back this year, The Democrats increasingly look like a party desperately trying to find its own identity and relevance, as Trump, meanwhile, chalks up win after win on things like trade, North Korea, and, yes, the economy. Now, my personal advice to Democrats is this. Keep doing what you're doing, because the American people are a lot smarter than you give them credit for. And I actually look forward to their final ruling on this latest complaint of the Democrats and all those that preceded it come this November. And that's The Angle. Joining me now for a reaction is Sean Duffy, a Republican congressman from Wisconsin. And with me here in the studio is Philippe Reines, an advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign. Gentlemen, great to see both of you this Friday night.
Hey, Laura.
Let's start with you, Philippe. Look, this lawsuit, I read it. I read all 64 pages. I believe it's 64 pages. And it is goofy. I'm sorry. It's just a goofy law. I mean, are they going to serve like Vladimir Putin with papers? This, to me, looks like they're not getting what they want from the special counsel. The Russia collusion thing's going nowhere. So maybe something will happen with Cohen, but they have to desperately keep this thing going. They have to keep it, breathing more air on the fire until the midterms. Is this the real deal or what?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand your point. And, I don't know Congressman Duffy. Bear with me while I make a point. He was elected in 2010.
You always do a little research on the guests you're on.
I was hoping he'd be here.
You pull this every time. You come out with a little tidbit on Wikipedia.
I work for someone who liked to be prepared. I have the same.
Okay, fine.
He won decently his first, and you've won handily your last two. And with all due respect, I hope you lose in November because I'm a Democrat and I'd like to flip the House. But I want you to lose fair and square or win fair and square. I don't want anyone meddling. And I know no one likes to admit that, but the problem I think we're in now is that it is such a Hillary Clinton blames Russia thing that no one is talking about Russians or Chinese or North Koreans or whoever it may be screwing around with our election. And the point I'm trying to make about the court is that because it's a Republican Congress, there are no bills to protect the election. This is something the lawsuit can't be fired.
Go ahead, Sean.
Laura, this is outrageous. First of all, I mean, it's rich that the DNC is trying to file a lawsuit about Russia collusion. The very DNC that hired and funded a dossier with information that came from Russian informants. They're the ones that colluded with the Russians. Beyond that, I don't know why they didn't name Barack Obama, who didn't do anything in the election of 16 to stop the Russian involvement in the election, or James Comey, who came out and did press releases on his investigation. But frankly, I think the DNC should have included Garmin and Google Maps because Hillary Clinton couldn't seem to find Wisconsin on the map and come and campaign. I mean, to come and make up these excuses about why Democrats lost, I think is pathetic. They had a bad message. They had a bad candidate. Donald Trump understood that he had to go out and win the electorate with a set of ideas that they bought into. That's why we won. And I agree with your point. I hope the Democrats keep talking about Russia. I hope they keep Nancy Pelosi in the leadership position because we're focusing on ideas that grow the economy, that make people's lives better and their families, and Democrats can't get beyond why they lost the last election and Russia.
Gloria Borger was on CNN today. She's no great fan of the president's. And Philippe, maybe you'll respond to this. This is what she said about the lawsuit.
Honestly, it's just a way to raise money. And
that's what it is.
That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to raise money off of it. But I think this is just one more way to get into the act here and continue what they've been doing all along.
Okay.
Well, look, I'd make 2 points. One is President Trump's own intelligence community says the Russians are going to meddle in 2018. So unless the congressman doesn't agree with that, I do think there has to be steps to protect. On the lawsuit thing, I'll be honest with you, without being a lawyer, I'm glad the Democrats are doing this because the Republican Party has very effectively used outlets like Judicial Watch and others that
Media
have used
Matters,
the courts.
MoveOn.org, Think Progress.
Let me
count the ways.
But they don't sue. Judicial Watch is very effective.
Oh, it's FOIA requests.
Yeah.
Oh, FOIA.
We don't do that, and I'm not.
Then file a FOIA request. Okay, I want to talk about something that's kind of fun. This is fun. This is
for you.
No, it's fine. This is the new book out by Amy Chozick of the New York Times, and we have a couple of fun little excerpts.
I bet.
So she covered Hillary Clinton for 10 years. Okay, and the book is called Chasing Hillary. 10 years, 2 presidential campaigns, and 1 intact glass ceiling, because she lost because she's a woman, don't you know? This is one quote. This is what Hillary says on election night. I knew it. I knew this would happen to me. Should I do it in her voice? I knew this would happen to me. They were never going to let me be president. Really?
By the way, this was not fun. I hope the next part's fun. I think she was disappointed. I was in the room with her when things were going badly. And
for like 5 seconds.
You know, I think that it was hard to take. And she knew immediately that a series of things.
Why didn't she come out and do a
her.
concession speech? That was lame.
Because both campaigns had agreed to wait until AP called it. Honestly.
Okay.
Hey, Laura.
She called. I was in the room when she called Donald Trump. She did it very quickly.
Sean, real quick.
This is a great quote. They, the deplorables, wouldn't let me win. And is she entitled to be the president of the United States of America? You earn the presidency. You go out and earn the vote, and she thinks she's entitled that they won't let me be the president. This quote encompasses everything that's wrong with Hillary Clinton. She felt like she could just say, I'm a Clinton, Bill was my husband, and I'm entitled to win this election without working, without giving a vision and a direction for the country. It's frankly shameful, but you know what? She'll never go away. She's used to being in the press.
Well, you're not letting her go away.
She wants her names on the... what's that?
No, this is Amy's, but we're out of heartbreak,
guys. And Fox won't let her go away. You'd think she was president.
We didn't even get into the mention of you.
She won't let it go away.
We had a hard break on a Friday night, guys. We let you off the hook.
Go ahead.
Nancy Pelosi trying to rally the troops against tax cuts. What happens to that chant when we get back? That's right. All right, welcome back. Now it's time for our Friday Follies segment. We've got some hot cultural topics, starting with the growing problems posed by people pretending that their pets are service animals. In New York tonight, we welcome Fox News contributor Raymond Arroyo. You're not here, Arroyo, so it's not. You don't get the same mojo. No.
We brought the Follies to Broadway.
First of all, I have to say, you're not an animal person. So you should be opted out of this segment. You don't like animals, not even your own dog, Maddie.
I had an emotional support animal next to me on a Southwest flight. It literally, I'm not lying, it was chewing on my shoe. So I have a little grievance against these animals.
Oh, fine. All right.
They are, the numbers of these emotional support animals have gone through the roof, Laura. From 481,000 2 years ago to 751,000 animals. Now, the reason people try to pass them off as emotional support animals is because they fly free, okay? All you have to do is alert the airline and present a paper from a medical professional showing that you need your emotional support animal. Now, the airlines are reacting because they've been mauling people on the planes. They leave droppings here and there, which contaminate the plane.
That's some of the passengers. I've seen some of these passengers lately. They show up in their pajamas for flight.
Well, they have to fly, but not so with the animals. Read that statement from the airlines.
All right.
They now
Here's
are going
the American
to the Transportation
Airlines. Here's the American Airlines for America lobby group. Airlines have experienced a surge in passengers bringing animals on board that haven't been appropriately trained as service animals. This has resulted in our crew members and passengers being bitten and subject to other offensive and injurious behavior. Oh, they need to lighten up. I'd rather be sitting next to most dogs than, you know,
Laura,
some of the other people.
This woman tried to get a peacock on a Southwest airline, and she was denied.
Well, peacocks need to fly. That's an anti-NBC
Oh, really?
bias that you
I've
have.
got one to top you. My friend Walter today said, look up an old Wall Street Journal article. We did.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read this, and then I have some video for you.
Yeah.
This man brought a miniature horse onto the plane. This was the article. Pox was traveling with a miniature service horse in seat 3A. Horse had a bowel movement on the carpet of the bulkhead. Cabin service had to do excessive cleaning in order for aircraft to leave for the next flight. Now, we found video, Laura, of a woman who actually had a miniature horse emotional service animal in her home. Look, it's opening the refrigerator for her. I mean, come on.
Well, wait, they're making your point. Look, it can do pretty much anything.
But it can't be on a plane with me, Laura. There's there's barely enough space for me at this point.
I want more support animals, and I like to. One woman let me hold her dog as she went to the bathroom. She came back. This was on a Delta flight. She came back, and I said, can I hold the dog for the rest of the flight? She said, sure. I held the dog for the rest of the flight. It was all the way to California.
You're the dog support animal. You've become the dog support.
I help the dogs come
You're going to have to wear one of those things that say, do not touch support animal.
Well,
Emotional
I won't even
support.
go there.
Okay.
All right. When a chant is not a chant.
When a chant is not a chant.
Democrats seem to have a little trouble, so do Republicans, in coming up with new chants. And you pointed this out because Nancy Pelosi was at a tax rally this past week, and it was saying that Democrats are going to raise taxes on the rich. Republicans are letting the rich get off scot-free. Let's hear some of this lame chant.
We cannot let it stand. We won't 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 let it stand.
Repeal the Trump tax, replace the ones that passed it. Repeal the Trump tax, replace the ones that passed it. Repeal the Trump tax, replace the ones that passed it. Repeal the Trump tax, replace the ones that passed it.
Oh, is that bad? These are not
no
chants,
rhyming.
Laura. These are not great chants.
Repeal the one,
You can't even remember it. It's so long, and you know, they could try to sing it with you know, in a meter. A chant has to be, it has to have rhyme. It should have a certain musicality. It should be memorable, and I will add, passionately delivered. None of which you could accuse those past chants.
Are these your bullets? Look at this. It should rhyme. What is this from the chant handbook? You
No,
came
this
up
is
with this tonight.
this is
You have
the
nothing to
Arroyo
talk
book
about.
of chant. I'm sharing this with you for the first time.
Hell no, we won't go. That actually rhymes. Give Peace a Chance was kind of lyrical.
Well, now wait.
And it also had a song to it.
I want to be bipartisan here.
Yeah.
This is Mitt Romney. Listen to this supposed chant.
Oh, come on, that's mean.
Wait a second, Romney Ryan, Romney Ryan, Romney Ryan.
An unmemorable chant, if there ever was one.
Poor Mitt. I like
Poor
him,
Mitt.
but poor guy. Vape Nation. Now we're all vaping. Vape shops everywhere. I was down in Florida over vacation, and vape shops everywhere because everyone's getting ready for the big push for national legalized marijuana. So if the vape shops are ready,
I agree with you.
You can put the pod in the vape, whatever you call it, pipe. I don't know what you
Yeah,
call
they
it.
have, well, the chamber,
whatever it is.
the chamber of the vape has a liquid component. Now, these 63% of young people, Laura, teens and those in high school, believe that the vape, 63%, that e-cigarettes and vapes do not contain nicotine and that they're good for your health. In actuality, they contain, the liquid cylinder contains as much as a pack of cigarettes, the nicotine in a pack of cigarettes. So they're very addictive, and I think you're right. This is a precursor, getting them ready to put other substances into that vape. By the way, they're not supposed to be selling this to people under 18. Some manufacturers require they be 21 before they use the vape.
Hey, Raymond, don't you like how John Boehner used to be against even medical marijuana? Now suddenly he's in this like hashtag alternative acre or acres.
Well,
it's some pot lobbying group or pot advocacy group. He's on the advisory board.
Well, he was a big smoker as well as a Merlot drinker. Maybe he's vaping the Merlot now. That might be a good way to go for him.
It's Friday. It's
It's almost time.
Somewhere. Raymond Arroyo, thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Have a great
all
weekend.
Right. And it sounds like a bad parody of a detergent ad. The new and improved Democratic Party, now featuring felons. But it's no joke, and we're going to tell you why next. Now, we all know many Democrats embrace illegal immigration to expand their voter base with Hispanic Americans. Republicans like the cheap labor. But this week, we told you how the Democrats in Washington, D.C. may actually now start letting 16-year-olds vote, both in local and in national elections. And we now are ready to add felons? Oh, felons on parole to the base of the Democrat Party? I kid you not. Well, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has recently issued an executive order giving 35,000 paroled felons the right to vote. Joining us now, someone who supports this proposal. I'm delighted he's with us. Corey Johnson, who is the Speaker of the New York City Council, and he represents like the coolest part of New York. Sorry, Greenwich Village and Hell's Kitchen, and oh, come on, that's like the coolest place to represent. I mean, come on. I'm hanging out with you in New York next time I come. How you doing, Councilman? Good to see you.
Very good. Thanks for having me tonight.
Absolutely. Okay, so give us the sense behind the felons. So these aren't felons that have finished their parole. These are felons that are still within the penal system, having to demonstrate good faith and lawfulness and so forth.
Yeah, these are folks that have been paroled. The parole board has made a decision that they are not a risk and they are not incarcerated anymore. And this isn't anything new. 14 states in the country allow this in the same exact way. Deep red states like Utah and North Dakota allow the same thing. So deep blue states, Hawaii and Massachusetts, deep red states, North Dakota and Utah. This is about re-enfranchising people, reintegrating people into civic life. And studies show that civic engagement lessens recidivism. Less people recommit, hopefully, if they're integrated into society.
So voting is going to... Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but we have 76%, I believe, recidivism rate in New York State, and it's similar across the country, in the first 5 years of being released. So 76% go on to commit another crime, are back in the penal system. But your argument tonight is by voting, they're going to be drawn into the system?
It's not one thing. There are multiple things. I mean, probably the most important thing is getting people jobs. It's getting people who are let out of prison actually reintegrated, having an income, being able to support themselves.
That's for sure.
one thing.
I agree with you on that. But the voting thing, let's just go through the other ways that felons forfeit various rights that are important to people like you and me and others. Holding many government jobs, they can't hold a lot of them as felons on parole. Certain welfare benefits they're not able to get. Second Amendment rights, no can do. And they're broadly excluded from running for office, Mr. Speaker. So would any of those rights, would you submit, should also be, given back to felons that are on parole? Second Amendment rights, could they run for your position, for instance, as Speaker or as council member?
Well, sadly, in certain places, they actually can. In New York, if you're a convicted felon, you can run for office, which I'm not sure that's a good idea, and there are probably some constitutional issues involved. But right now, if you're a parolee, there could be curfew requirements, there could be drug treatment program requirements, things that have to do with public safety. Allowing someone to vote does not endanger the public safety in any way. Only a gun, as you just mentioned, public safety issue.
But isn't this just a way to get votes? I mean, you're so well spoken, and you're such an interesting person on so many levels. I mean, you're hilarious. I watched one of your where were you going when you were dancing in the taxi recently on that video?
I'm always happy to sing Lady Gaga with you.
Oh my God! First of all, that was hilarious. I just saw that on YouTube tonight.
You can put on The Cure if you want.
Oh no! Friday I'm in Love. You got to listen to that acoustic, my friend. That's the best. That's the best version of that song. But I digress, because right now a lot of people think Governor Cuomo is just trying to. It's whether it's the illegal immigrants or I am woman. He said today, like, I'm a woman. What was that? Let's watch that, because for our viewers who missed that, let's watch.
I'm undocumented. You want to deport an undocumented person? Start with me, because I'm an undocumented person.
Oh, well, you don't have the part he said, I'm a woman. I guess we cut that up. He said, I'm a woman. What was that? That was kind of a curious... I mean, I like to be all things to all people, but you literally cannot be, Mr. Speaker. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think this is about, in many ways, the point he was probably trying to make, though I'm not sure, I'm guessing, has to do with intersectionality, has to do with identifying with folks who have been disenfranchised. Governor Cuomo helped pass same-sex marriage in New York City. He's worked to protect the rights of women. But I want to make one point before we go, which is George Will, a conservative commentator who you know quite well, spoke recently in favor of ensuring that people who have been let out of prison in Florida, there's going to be a ballot initiative there, get the right to vote. You've seen Jared...
But after parole. I think after parole, correct? That's his point, I believe?
You've seen Jared Kushner speak out in favor of Susan Collins, Republican Senator, Hakeem Jeffries, a bill there. You've seen Rand Paul talk about getting rid of mass incarceration rates. You've seen the Koch brothers. These are all people that I don't really agree with. Talk about the cost of prison.
Yeah, when you're citing the Koch brothers, I'm worried. Okay?
Well, no, I'm just saying
brothers are like
this is
the
a
boogeyman, except when they're
issue.
agreeing to something like
this. If you look at states like Utah and North Dakota,
how many felons do they have in Utah? There's probably 35,000 in a state that's like, I can't imagine it's even 35,000. But look, I think the issue is expanding voter rolls for Democrats. I mean, just now, why do it by executive order? Why not go to the legislature and actually make the case for this to the people of New York? Maybe the people of New York will be fine with it.
We should have a segment on why does the Trump administration do everything by executive order? Why are cabinet secretaries changing the rules by executive order or by fiat?
Okay, so it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Councilman, Mr. Speaker, it's great to have you on tonight. Thanks so much for spending. I'm coming to do Lady Gaga in the cab with you, okay? We're doing that.
Thank you for
100%.
having me. And thank you for having me. I'm really grateful that the Kobach Commission is gone.
We'll come right back. Another national student walkout today from school to protest gun violence. And this one was timed to coincide with the 19th anniversary. It's hard to believe the shootings at Columbine High School in Colorado. Joining us now to discuss how to really make schools safer is Daryl Scott. Daryl is the father of Rachel Scott, who was the first victim of the Columbine High School shooters in Littleton, Colorado. Daryl, it's so great to talk to you. We have so many friends in common, and I'm so bowled over by everything you've done in these last 19 years. I'm sure to you it seems like yesterday. And you run this foundation called Rachel's Challenge. Tell us how you think it's the best way to proceed to actually stop these shootings.
Well, thank you, Laura. It's great to be here with you. I really want to applaud young people for wanting to make a difference and for marching for what they believe in. I want to just gently challenge them to focus on more than just gun control, because Eric and Dylan, the shooters at Columbine 19 years ago, said in a camera, you're going to change the gun laws, you're going to add more gun laws, and it's not going to stop people like us from doing what we do. And I'm as passionate about change as these young people are. In fact, when the cameras go away, when the passion dies down, my challenge to all the young people is to maintain their desire to end the violence. And our family has chosen to do that over the last 19 years. We created a program for schools. We reach about 1 to 2 million students each year, over 25 million over the last 19 years. And we've seen 7 school shootings prevented. And we've seen an average of about 3 suicides prevented every week. There's far more suicides than there are school victims of school shootings.
Right.
And we've done that through a message of kindness, compassion, and helping connect people to one another. Because when there's violence or when there's reaction to these kind of situations, we can do one of 3 things. We can hate and we can retaliate. Dr. King told us that hate will not remove hate, only love can do that. So we can hate and retaliate, we can debate and demonstrate, or we can relate and communicate. And relating and communicating is what our message has been, and we see the fruit of that.
I want to play for our viewers a description of Rachel's writing, your daughter's writing. Let's listen.
She understood the power that a simple act of kindness can have. I have this theory that if one person can go out of their way to show compassion, then it will start a chain reaction of the same. You know, at a time when most kids in high school are just trying to fit in, she just wanted to be herself, encouraged others to do the same.
Now, I imagine, although it's hard to imagine, there probably isn't a 15-minute period, a 5-minute period over the last 19 years where you didn't think about your daughter.
That's right. And you know, there's a lot of attention being poured, a lot of money is being poured into the gun issue, and I'm not here to debate that. There's money from both sides being poured into that as a solution, but we need to look beyond the instrument and look at how we can prevent these things from happening, starting with the hearts of our kids. And I want to challenge people to pour as much money into programs like Sandy Hook Promise, like Kickstart for Kids, like Why Try, like Rachel's Challenge. We have a friend, Foster Freeze, who has put up $2.5 million from now through the end of July. And every one of you who donate $5, $10, it's going to be doubled to Rachel's Challenge. You can go to rachelscott.org or rachelscott.com, and it's going to help us reach a lot more kids.
Daryl, this is a perfect way to end this week. Something incredibly positive, incredibly compassionate, and real. person touching person.
Thank
It's
you.
not through a screen. It's people helping people, one-on-one. You got to reach out to people who are in trouble. And you've done that for the past 19 years. You've turned tragedy into triumph. We pray for you and for all the victims of gun violence and tragedy across this country. Thank you for what you're doing. We need a spiritual reawakening in this country, and you're helping, along with Foster Freeze and so many others. And you got a donation coming from me, my friend. We'll be right back.